I don't know about you, but I love an Indian meal. But one of the problems when you're dieting is that if you have a look at the amount of fat that's used in most Indian cookery, and fat, of course, in slimming world terms, is very, very sinful. What you find is that it's almost impossible, unless you're going to go way off plan, to actually enjoy a meal out or a takeaway or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I've come up with. This is a little combination of meals that I've actually been cooking for a long, long time. Meals that I got from Madhur Jaffrey back in the 1980s when she did her first television series. And the meals that I've been cooking for years, but what I've done is I've adapted them. So instead of using the tons of oil that goes into each dish, I've just used a little bit of fry light. And I think I've got it to work. So what I'm going to show you is a little Indian banquet. This is just a little meal actually just for me and Jane, but there will be leftovers. There are always leftovers. The main meals are potatoes and cauliflower. This is one of my favourite meals, and it has been for a long time. It's a very lovely cuminy, spicy mix of potatoes and cauliflower, and that's all that's in it, other than the spices. But it really, really takes on a richness, and it's really been popular with everybody I've ever given it to. And we're going to accompany that with a bowl of cabbage and peas. You see, this is not just Syn-free, this is vegetarian. In fact, it's vegan. So if you've got friends, or if you yourself are vegetarian or vegan, or if you've got friends that are vegetarian or vegan, this is ideal. The only thing in this whole menu that isn't vegan is the yogurt and mint and cucumber, because of course it's got yogurt in it. But other than that, everything else I think you'll probably find is vegan. That's the two main constituents of the meal. Accompanying that, we've got a mango chutney that I am trying for the first time, that I found a recipe online for Slimming World's Syn-free, well, low sin actually, mango chutney. So we'll see how that goes. And also we're going to have some chickpea dal, which is actually out of a can. This is a kind of, I think it's Madagascar chickpea dal from Morrison's, which I believe, according to a lady who used it to make it in her curry loaf, is actually Syn-free. So that's a bonus, and it tastes really nice, so that's good. With that, we've got a bowl of chopped up onion and tomato with just some salt and pepper and some vinegar and a few sprays of fry light spray on it. And as I said before, alongside that we have the yogurt and mint. It's just dried mint. As long as you leave it in there to infuse in the fridge for maybe an hour or something, it takes on the flavour into the yogurt, which is rather nice. And there's a little bit of cucumber chopped up in there as well. It'll give you a little bit of coolness to go with everything. And that's it. There's plenty of food there for two. As I said before, there will be leftovers. And I hope you enjoy it. If you want to. And what I've got here is around about 3 decent sized potatoes, chopped up into just about half-inch cubes, that sort of thing. They've been boiled, they're more or less cooked through, and now they're just being left to go cold. What is in here is one medium-sized cauliflower, and it's soaking in water. This is what she says to do for at least half an hour. I've never known why, but if Madhur Jaffrey says that's what you do, it's good enough for me. One of the things that this recipe calls for that you don't find on the supermarket shelves is ground roast cumin seeds. And what I've got here is a cast iron pan that is dry, no oil in it, you don't want any oil in it, and I've got it hot, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in about half a teaspoon of cumin seeds. Just give them a shake. And as the pan is hot, it's not long before they start to crack. There you are, you can hear them cracking away there and roasting in the pan. It doesn't take long. If you give them too long and they go black, what you've actually got is just a charred mess. There we go, they are done. And they start to smell beautiful. They smell totally different than ordinary cumin seeds or cumin powder. What I do next, let's just turn that off. What I do next is put them into a spoon. A big spoon. This is a big tablespoon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a teaspoon and crush the seeds in the big spoon. It's very, very easy to do, and powder them down. There we go. So they're in there. Now a few of them will pop out as you do this. Don't worry about that. There's plenty in here. The recipe only calls for half a teaspoonful of ground roast cumin seeds. I suppose you could make a big batch and put them in a grinder, but I think that one of the things with these roast cumin seeds is that they are freshly done. Because believe me, as I'm crushing this little collection of seeds here in this spoon, go away, flies are everywhere this year. I'm having to keep everything covered up all the time. As I'm crushing everything up with this little spoon, the smell that is rising to my nose is absolutely gorgeous. And that smell is one of the really signature flavours of this particular dish. There we are, that's enough, and that's enough for the whole dish. So in this bowl I've got the spice mix for the dish, and I've got half a green chilli that I've finely chopped. I've taken the seeds out because we don't like it that hot. You can add more if you want to, if that's your bag, but it's not mine. I've got a teaspoon of ground cumin seeds, half a teaspoon of ground coriander, a quarter of a teaspoon of ground turmeric, quarter of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and the half teaspoon of ground roast cumin seeds that you saw me roast a moment ago, a teaspoon of salt, and some freshly ground black pepper. You can prepare them all in advance, put them in a bowl like that because they all go in at once. Alright, so you're going to have to excuse the background noise in this section of the video because I've got a dishwasher going behind me, I've got two ovens going at once, so if it gets a bit noisy, well, that's just the way it is. This is a house, it's not a television studio. Right, so I've got the pan on here ready, a nice large frying pan, and I'm going to give it a few sprays. I've got a heat under it already. I'm going to give it a few sprays of fry light, and then I'm going to put in the first ingredient. Now what Madhur Jaffrey's got in her pan at this time, when she does it and how I used to do it, is 5 tablespoons of oil. course we've not got that. And what we're adding next would normally sizzle like mad in the hot oil. That's 2 teaspoonfuls of cumin seeds. Actually, it should only be 1. Let's take some out. Okay, 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds. Getting confused, that's the next dish that I do that has 2 teaspoonfuls of cumin seeds. There we go. That's fine, no problem. So what I do is I spray in the fry light, and then once I've got the cumin seeds in there, I just give it another quick spray to coat the seeds. Let them take the heat for a few seconds. Now normally, of course, in 5 tablespoons of oil they're sizzling away and popping. They're not going to do that in fry light. They're just going to get warm. What I found to be the trick was replacing 5 tablespoons of oil with a few sprays of fry light is to take everything slower. It tends to use up this oil very quickly if it's cooked too fast. Normally it should cook a lot quicker. With this, I slow it down. They've got some heat in there now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the cauliflower that I chopped up earlier. That's where we get a bit of a sizzle. And just toss it round to coat the cauliflower in the cumin seeds. Then I give the cauliflower itself a quick spray. And stir it around for a little while. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook this cauliflower like this until it starts to get a few brown spots on it. And take a little bit of colour. Once it's got to that stage, I'll cover it up, turn it down and let it release its own juices and sort of roast in the pan for a few minutes. This is one of my favourite dishes by far. I've been eating this dish, as I said at the beginning, for the last 35 years. For 5 years of those, early on, I was vegetarian. And this was a great dish to eat when I was vegetarian. I lapsed from being a vegetarian after a while, but I still kept this one in the there we go, in the recipe book of my favourite dishes. The way this roasts down the cauliflower really lets a lot of flavour out, and then once we add the spices to it, it really gets a nice richness to it. I didn't think that I was going to be able to do this without all the oil, but believe it or not, I've done it a few times now and it really, really works. It's just a matter of taking it steady, not burning anything. And letting it just, there we go, you can see here there's a few of the bits of cauliflower starting to get a few little dark spots on where they're catching on the bottom of the pan. All those little spots add quite a little bit of flavour of their own. Cauliflower is a wonderful vegetable in that way. You know, when I was a kid I hated cauliflower because all that my mum's generation seemed to do with it was put it in a pan of boiling water and cook it to death. Okay, works. But when you start roasting it, or when you start cooking it like this and adding spices to it, it takes on a totally different flavour. And I think it's one of the loveliest vegetables there is. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the heat down on it so that it doesn't actually burn. Knock it right down, and I'm going to put a lid on it and let it sit there, taking on the heat for a few minutes. Probably leave it there for somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. I'll just check it occasionally. So this has been cooking away gently now for around about 10 minutes, and it looks just about ready for the next stage. I did take the lid off after about 5 minutes and just check it, and I did a little drop of water to the bottom of the pan just to deglaze the pan and give the it's not cucumber, is it? Cauliflower a little more steam underneath the lid there to cook it down. You want to cook it until it's still got a bit of crunch in it. You don't want it to go all soggy and floppy. And then what I do then is I turn the heat back up, not all the way, but just put a bit more heat under it. And the next thing to do is to take the cold potatoes that have been sitting there, waiting their turn, and just pop them in there. Gently stir them in. You don't want them to break up into a mush. And then it's time to add the spices. Give them a bit of a mix up there so that they get evenly distributed. And scatter them over the top. Get them all out of the bowl as much as possible. And give them a bit of a stir. Now at this stage, because normally at this stage you've got a lot of oil in there, remember? I sometimes just give it just a little bit of an extra spray with the fry light. And the fry light I'm using there was a sunflower one, but normally I give it a spray with this one, which is the buttery flavoured one, which tends to work really nice. Just picked the wrong one up at first, to be honest. I always use the buttery flavour. And literally now just stir it round, give the potatoes a chance to warm up, and that is that. Now I'm going to be serving this in a few minutes, so I'm just going to put the lid on it and put it to one side. You can happily, if you want to, put it into a serving dish, put a little bit of a cover over it, pop it in the oven. It'll sit there happily until you're ready to serve it. So that's basically it. Potatoes and cauliflower, or gobi, I believe it's called. This is a dish that, if you don't eat all of this now, you put it in the fridge and tomorrow you can heat it up and it's lovely. You can put it in a food flask and take it to lunch, take it with you for your lunch. It's even nice cold. It's just so tasty and so flavoursome. So let's put a lid on that, and I'll get on with cooking the next dish, which you'll see in the next video. This next dish has to be one of the easiest dishes in the world. But believe me, it is so full of flavour you wouldn't believe. You're looking at the two main ingredients. On the right, of course, is the cabbage. It's a whole cabbage. This is a sweetheart cabbage that was just in the fridge, so I've used it. You can do it with a Savoy, you can do it with any cabbage that you want, really. Of course, if you use a white cabbage, you need to cook it for a little longer because it's thicker. But any cabbage will do. And on the left, 150 grams of frozen peas that I've just put in a sieve and run them under the warm tap just to separate them out. And that is the two ingredients. The rest of it's just spices. But believe me, you will not believe how lovely this tastes. So here are the spices for this dish. I've got them in two separate dishes because they go in at different times. Over in the right hand bowl we've got a quarter of a teaspoonful of cayenne pepper and a quarter of a teaspoonful of turmeric. Whereas over here in the left hand bowl we've got 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt and 3/4 of a teaspoon of sweetener. The original recipe said sugar, but of course we're doing it Syn-free, so that's sweetener. And there's half a green pepper, deseeded and finely sliced. Up there I've got a pot of garam masala because a little bit of that goes on right at the last minute. And that's all the spices you need. I say that's all the spices you need. There are, of course, some whole spices that go in at the beginning. We've got 2 teaspoonfuls of whole cumin seeds and a couple of bay leaves, that's all. First thing we do, as usual, is give the wok, and it really is good to use a wok to do this dish because you really need to toss it about quite a bit. If you've got a big frying pan, you can do it in a frying pan, but I like to do it in the wok. I've got some heat under the wok already. And into the wok goes 2 teaspoons full of cumin seeds, whole cumin seeds, and a couple of bay leaves. Remember, this originally this recipe calls at this point for 5 spoons of oil. We're not doing that, we're just giving it a bit of a spray with fry light and popping it in. And these recipes that I'm doing here as part of this Indian meal are real proof that you can actually do so much with so little fat. And then you just get used to throwing in the fat. Right, that's warm in there, and in goes the cauliflower. Not cauliflower, honestly, what am I talking about? Talking rubbish here. In goes the cabbage and the peas. And all you're going to do is to give it a stir, dig down deep and pick up the cumin seeds there. Whoops a daisy. Oh blimey. Never happens to Jamie Oliver, does it? Oh. And dig down deep so that you get the cumin seeds mixing in with everything. Now you've got a little bit of liquid in those peas there, which is helping it not to burn on the bottom. But all you've got to do now is to add the turmeric and cayenne pepper. There we are, quarter of a teaspoon of turmeric, quarter of a teaspoonful of cayenne pepper. Sprinkle it over the lot. Make sure you get the last bits out of the bowl. Toss it around a bit. This really is so easy. It's so easy. It's vegetarian. In fact, it's vegan. You know, you're a student maybe living in halls. Everything you want to cook in one pan and quickly. This is very quick and tasty to throw together. Right, that's it. Toss together. Now we're going to just put a lid on that one. Turn the heat to low. And just let it sit there for about 5 minutes. So, there we go. Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. That's been simmering away there for about 5 minutes. And you see it's all gone very, very floppy, just exactly how you want it. And it's time now to add the final, well, almost final spices. And what we've got here is half a green chilli chopped up, as I say, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and 3/4 of a teaspoonful of what would in the old days have been sugar, but now is sweetener, and you cannot tell the difference, believe me. So that just gets tossed around there for a couple of minutes, just to let those spices take on an extra little bit of flavour. Just put the lid on it for a moment or two, and then that is almost the end of the story. One of the main problems that I found when I started following the Slimming World plan is sauces and pickles and chutneys and that sort of thing all seem to be quite heavy in sins. And so you can't just slather everything in sauce that you might have done before. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to follow a recipe that I found online. It's supposed to be about 3 sins for the whole thing when it's done, so that's between 2 hours, not bad at all, and it's for mango chutney. What have I got? I've got 1 red onion, chopped up nice and fine, and with that is 1 dried chilli, which I've also soaked for a little while in some boiling water, and then I've chopped that up. That's gone in there with it. In here we have 2 cloves of garlic, finely chopped, and about 1 inch of ginger that's also been finely chopped up. Just over, actually, 100 grams of mango. And in here, 2 tablespoons of granulated sweetener. You can use any type you want. I personally prefer sucralose-based sweeteners because I don't think it leaves the same aftertaste as a lot of the aspartame and that sort of sweeteners do. And I've never really come to terms with stevia. There's also 2 tablespoons of white wine vinegar and 1 tablespoon of soy sauce in there. So let's start getting it into the pan. So give the pan a bit of a spray with a bit of fry light there, and into that goes the onion and the chilli. Give that another spray. There we are. That is probably all the oil that will get used in the whole recipe, which is pretty good. Spoon that here. So what we're going to do is we're going to let that soften and sweat down a little bit. There we go. So that's been softening in here for 3 or 4 minutes. Now, one of the things that I remember Madhur Jaffrey saying in that series back in, excuse me, the chili coming off this is getting into my throat. One of the things that I remember Madhur Jaffrey saying was that the more you cook your onions, the more you sweat down these onions, the more flavour they will give off. So don't just throw them in and cook them for a minute or two. Give them a really good cooking there. They've been cooked there for a minute or two, so it's time to add the garlic and the ginger. You don't want to add, one of the things that I've learnt over the years is very tempting to add the garlic at the same time as the onions. The only problem is that garlic tends to burn easily, and burnt garlic is bitter and not nice. Now you'll notice here that in the bottom of the pan it's starting to brown down a little bit. So what I do there, this is because of the lack of oil. What I do there, as you saw there, was I add just a touch of water, and what that does is that just takes, that's it, takes the dryness out of the bottom of the pan and stops all that catching on the bottom there. Let's turn it down just a little bit, might be a little bit too high. There we are. That was something I got from Ken Hom. Do you remember Ken Hom? Used to do the Chinese cooking programs about 20 years ago. One of the things that he said in one of the videos of his that I was watching was that once you added the initial oil into a wok, you don't want to add more oil. The tendency is when things start to dry up a little bit to add oil. You don't want to do that because everything just goes oily. So what you add instead is a little bit of water or a little bit of chicken stock, which soon fries off and it just stops everything drying up. So now we're going to add to this, if I am right, check the recipe here, the mango. Let's get the mango in. It's nicely chopped up. The strange noises that you might be hearing in the background here are our dog, Suki, who seems to be asking me if she can go out, which at the moment while I'm doing this she can't, because there are sheep in the next door's field, and last thing we want is getting into there. So that now wants to go on very low, and the lid on it. That's the lid. Is that the right lid for the pan? No, it's not. Let's get the correct lid for the pan. There it is. And that needs to cook down now for a few minutes to get the mango cooking. There we go. It's had just a couple of minutes with the lid on there, just to start to soften the mango down. So now it's time to add the sweetener, the white wine vinegar and the soy sauce. There we go. Put that in there, give it a stir. There we go. And according to the recipe, what we do now is we leave that with a lid on it for between 5 and 15 minutes, all depending I suppose on the mango that you've got, how ripe it is, and the heat that you've got. And we let it thicken up. Let the mango soften and melt and the whole thing thicken up. So that's what's left over of the mango chutney after we've had the meal. And I've put it in a little pot. I'm going to put some cling film over the top of it, put it in the fridge overnight. I'm going to have it with the leftovers tomorrow. Because all in all, I think it worked pretty well. A little bit acidic maybe. I think maybe next time I would not put in so much white wine vinegar. I'm not a great fan of acidic flavours, so yeah, I think that's probably the main thing that I change. I did actually end up adding another tablespoon of sweetener to it to try and sweeten it up a little bit. Is it the sort of mango chutney that I'm used to? No, it's not. Does it work together with the other food on the plate? Yes, it does. It does. It tends to be a little bit overpowering. You could, maybe next time I'll make it a little bit milder. But it was definitely an addition to the meal, and certainly not something that I wouldn't do again.